Father, we thank you this morning for your word and for what we're about to talk about. I would ask personally for me that you would help me to add and put into this talk what you have me to say and take out what you would not have me to say in a limited amount of time. And might be your words that these people hear. Yes, these things in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. Okay, preliminary session 2, bold confidence. How can you feel confident? This is what you should be doing, making disciples. So this is just basically a follow-up on last session. Last session was a left. This is going to be the counterpunch right to make sure it works. So here's a picture. This is a test. I want to ask you a question. If I showed you this, what do you see? Words. You actually see words in there?
Yes.
What else do you see in there?
Yeah, they are trees.
Person. Trees. Where do you see the person?
And
there's also a shadow. There's a shadow of a person in the middle of that. Now, if I told you this was your marching orders for the rest of your life, how confident would you be in that? Why?
I get less. All the time, right?
I get way less. How about if I shift about 2 degrees to the left and take the picture? This is not the reflection of the wall. This is actually what was on the wall that you were seeing. I was shooting out a window. What does this say? Does this look familiar? We just talked about this, didn't we? Now, how overly confident would you be now compared to the last picture? A little more confident. You might have some questions, or a lot of questions. At least you can see the instructions.
Some of it.
Some of it, yes. I did. But the first question I'm going to ask is, what is a disciple? We sort of talked about that last talk, but I came across this definition. I think this is, those of us that are simple-minded, I like this definition. This is from the first part of verse 19. God's people, helping God's people, actually do what Jesus actually commanded. How's that for a definition of a disciple? I like that.
Oh, wait.
Sorry.
Yeah.
30 seconds. We're now down to 35. No, I'm just kidding. As we prayed, certain things may be cut out of this. We'll see. Okay, I'm going to move on here. I'm going to make this next slide might make some of you a little nervous. I'm going to show it to you anyway. We don't have a discipleship issue in the church, I don't think, from my view. We have a good news and salvation issue first. And then, secondly, the desire problem. I don't think the church understands what the good news is, what salvation actually is, and then what a disciple is, and whether or not you want to do it or not. So I'm going to back up and start here for a moment. This is very important. So turn to 1 Corinthians 15. Some of you have seen this before. We've talked about this. But I want to go over 1 Corinthians 15 and explain a few things here. We're going to read the first 2 or 3 verses here. 1 Corinthians 15. Anyone there? Moreover, brethren, I declare to you the gospel which I preached to you, which also you received, in which you stand, by which you also are saved, if you hold fast that word which I preached to you, unless you believe in vain. And then he talks about what the gospel is. For I delivered to you first of all that which I received, that Christ died for our sins according to the Scriptures, and that he was buried, and that he was rose again the third day according to the Scriptures. So Paul tells the Corinthian church a couple things here. Number one, he says, which you received. He's writing to Christians in the church of Corinthians. So this gospel, wherever the gospel is, they have received it. Now, what tense is this in? Past tense. Okay, so they have received the gospel. They are Christians, they are a church, they received the gospel. Past tense. This is for your justification, salvation. So they received it. He also tells the Corinthian church, and in which you stand. So this gospel, you received it, but you're also standing in the gospel. What tense is this?
Present.
Present, which means what? Now. Okay, good. And this is God's power, Holy Spirit, and grace. But also, he says, continuing in verse 2, the Greek words it this way, a little different than what's in your English Bible, by which also you are being saved. So this gospel, what tense is this? Present, continual into the future. So the gospel is not just a past event of your justification. The gospel also includes what? Your present situation you're living and the future. So this gospel is pretty large. It's larger than what most people attribute it to. How much of your life, once you become a Christian, does the gospel encompass? All of it. From the moment you make a decision and you're justified until the rapture when you die, this is still the gospel. Now, unfortunately, we think after salvation there's a couple forks in the road in Christianity, and there is not. Remember this. There is no fork in the Christian life after conversion. This gospel is ongoing with our sanctification, disciple making, and discipleship. So, very important. A lot of people try and shrink the gospel down to past tense justification. The gospel, because it's from an all-knowing, all-powerful Lord created the universe, the gospel is all-encompassing. If we try and shrink it down, we get into some problems. And I will go on here. The question is, what gospel are we preaching? Are we preaching that gospel? That all-encompassing, large gospel, our whole life? And let me tell this little story. It's a true story from an author. Nothing is more accusatory to an evangelical Bible preacher than to be accused of not preaching the gospel. Nothing. I don't know what to teach it. I'm sure he's never going to teach that. But imagine you're an evangelical preacher and you're accused of not preaching the gospel. So one such pastor was having lunch with a prominent member in his congregation. And in the middle of lunch, his friend blurted out, "I must share with you my disappointment that you failed to share the gospel last Sunday service." Can you imagine sitting with one of your guys in church, a good friend, and he says, "I got to tell you, I'm really upset with you. You didn't share the gospel last Sunday at church." The pastor replied, "I can't believe you said that. I'm preaching expository Romans verse by verse." He said, "I've been in Romans for the last 2 months. I've been expositing verse by verse, which means taking each verse, breaking it down. Isn't that the gospel?" The member went on, "There are people in our service who need to be saved, and you're not giving them the opportunity. We're not seeing anyone get saved." The pastor finally was able to grasp what the man was saying to him. In the man's mind, the gospel had been shrunk down to and reduced to the plan of salvation and a request for a decision. And that man's mind, that was the gospel. That, folks, the Bible says that is not the gospel. The gospel is a lot more than that. We have to understand that. The shift from a gospel culture to a complete gospel culture, now, in the past I would say full gospel, but that has a different meaning. So I will say complete gospel, the whole gospel, to a salvation culture is what we have today in the church. We have a salvation culture as we do the church. What should be seen as just the starting point, our conversion to Christ, has become the finish line for many in the church. And that really messes up our idea of disciple making and discipleship. So make sure we understand that. This diminishes all the parts of salvation, grace, and the gospel, and this is the reason disciple making is so difficult in today's church. Because we try to shorten it down to decision making. And then we feel we're done. That's not what the Bible says. So let me give you a real quick lesson of how this happened. I know none of you love history, but I just have to throw this in real quick and show you how this happened. When the Reformation came, Luther, Calvin, all those guys rediscovered biblical grace. And that was a good thing. That needed to be done. The gravity of the gospel then shifted toward human response and personal responsibility, and the gospel morphing into speaking into that responsibility. So the gospel at the Reformation all of a sudden became speaking into personal responsibility. And that wasn't a bad thing. The Reformers reworked the gospel to be primarily about getting saved from the consequences of sin, justification. So the gospel became everything about being saved from the consequences of sin, justification, and everything else was sort of pushed aside. But this de-emphasized the here and now, the Christian walk, sanctification, becoming students and followers of Christ. That all was pushed aside. Again, that wasn't bad. Justification is important. It all starts with salvation. Someone once asked George Whitefield how many conversions occurred in a meeting he had. Do you know what his answer was? I don't know. We should know more in about 6 months. Think about that for a moment. He knew what was involved there. The call to salvation, or the invitation, or the sinner's prayer, those didn't actually come into, they're not found in the Bible anywhere. Those didn't come into being until Charles Finney back in the late 1800s. Those were things that he came up with and progressed through D.L. Moody, Billy Sunday, and Billy Graham. Now think about Billy Graham for a moment. What was his ministry? Evangelism. And in all the evangelistic sermons he preached, throw out a percentage you think if he taught in the Bible. Did he cover the whole Bible? Did he cover all aspects, all theologies? No. Well, I would say about 5 to 7%. He actually, if you go back and study all the verses and the chapters he talked about, he was narrowly, and that wasn't wrong, that was needed, but just keep that in mind. The invitation, the sinner's prayer, the call to salvation, they believe that if you could create the right conditions, the right music, the right playing on emotions, the right techniques, and some of these techniques you'll be familiar with. Everyone bow your head and close your eyes. You heard that before? That's a technique. Let me be frank with you. That's a technique. I'm not, again, techniques are right or wrong. That is just a technique. Raise your hand. That's a technique. Repeat these words. That's a technique. All these things, if you create the right conditions, right music, right playing emotions, right techniques, you can get people to make a decision. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. But if that is the whole purpose of what you think the gospel is, and your whole purpose as a church, you saw what would happen on that one slide that Pastor Stephen showed. You go from 100 down to 0. The problem became that God in His Word says He has an eternal purpose. Which is what? What is God's eternal purpose? To glorify Him and make disciples. And if we make this theology of making a decision, our whole work, what happens to the rest of that? It's gone. It's not good. Again, we're not knocking making a decision. Everyone has to make a decision. But our gospel has to include more than that. It has to include the complete gospel. This puts no emphasis on the church or discipleship. So we have, what happens is a lot of Christian organizations start, and the church is sort of negated. So what I'd like to do, this is how we got to that place. What I'd like to do is use my personal journey about how I reached the bold assurance of what I should be doing in my personal life and my church life to make a few points. Why do I have a robot up there? Yes, that's my dating picture. No. I was raised in the church from birth. As soon as I was born and into my family, we were at church, like the little one there. So until I began reading and studying the scriptures myself, which, by the way, I hate to admit this, I didn't do that to my late teens. I picked up most of my church knowledge and actions by what? By osmosis, just by watching and by experiencing and seeing what was going on. And I didn't give it much thought. Now, I was still a non-believer at this point, so whatever I saw happened. I take that back. I was an intellectual believer. I did believe everything intellectually. I believed everything they taught me. I agreed with everything they taught me. I just didn't realize that had to apply to me personally. So that's where I was at. Our family attended the church anytime the doors were open, as was said. My dad was the Sunday school superintendent for many years in the church, which back then what that meant was we all met together for 15 minutes and sang some songs, prayed, dismissed, went to class. He was in charge of that. So I remember that my earliest years, my earliest thoughts in church. Now, around the age of 11 or 12, I was at a church camp, family church camp. It was Sunday afternoon during missionary speaking. That's what the missionary is on there. And with the help of my mother, that's not my mother. Yeah. I actually received Christ as my Savior, but let me say this about that. Looking back and thinking about my life, I don't think I understood what this meant, and it did not affect my ongoing life for about 10 years. So you throw that into your theology, figure that out. We'll discuss that later. We'll talk about it. My mother died, though, about a year later. And through a series of circumstances, including moving here to Crawford County from Cleveland, Ohio, I never went any further in my Christian life because my dad had married a woman of another Protestant faith, shall we say. They could never agree which church to attend. So for the next 4 years, until I got to college, my dad and I went to different churches throughout the stars. I think we attended maybe all 33 of them at one time. And we stayed, I don't know why we stayed one and we moved, I have no idea. We attended Sunday school for the alphabet. Believe it or not, back in the 70s, yeah, early in the 70s, there weren't, not many churches had Sunday schools. It was rare. Attended church every Sunday, though. Was in the building every Sunday for an hour a day. And again, I don't think this influenced me too much. There was no personal emotions in my life. I didn't realize you had to do that. No one had told me that. There was little prayer time or Bible reading. No one said I had to do that. And I look back, I can't believe it. Either I wasn't listening or they didn't tell me. I don't know which one. I'm sure they mentioned it. I never got connected with a youth group in high school, which I look back and I'm sad. Because we were different places, different churches. I had no understanding where I was spiritually, what the next step was to be spiritually. And there was no community or koinonia. I had no church family, shall we say. And it was at this point I went off to college. So that was not a good thing. But while living in college, living in Columbus, I started dating a girl back named Cyrus, which is my wife now, Kimberly. And she had been attending a church here in Bucyrus. And I went every weekend when I came home, I went with her. And after a while, the preacher there, well, first of all, this is the first time I attended the same church for a long time in one script. The preacher there, I was quickly made aware something was off in my Christian life. And I couldn't quite figure it out yet. I knew all the answers. But it was at that church I recommitted my life, and I think that's when I actually was saved, if I might throw that out. Because I understood they believed in believers' baptism, they explained that, and I was baptized at age 22, something like that, 22, 23, I don't remember. And flash forward 5 years then, even at that point I was never told that I had to be a disciple of Christ or make disciples. But at least I was now getting into some more personal devotions. The pastor at that time talked to us. They introduced the Navigators 2.7 study. Anyone taking the Navigators 2.7 study? It's a great course. It was a study of personal discipleship to strengthen one's walk with God. He offered that on Saturday morning and coerced 6 or 8 couples into coming to that. And none of us wanted to go, but we went anyway. The premise, of course, comes from verse Colossians 2:7, rooted and built up in Him, established in the faith as you have been taught, abounding in Him with thanksgiving, beware lest anyone should cheat you through philosophy and conceit, from the tradition of men, and so forth. So this was my first encounter with discipleship. But this was What kind of discipleship? Personal discipleship. With me, actually, a little bit of group discipleship. It was me learning all about discipleship, what it meant. Prayer, reading the Bible. I mean, I realized you have to want to be a disciple, discipleship. And in the course of that study, my pastor said I asked too many questions. Maybe I should consider teaching where I could vividly figure out my own answers. That's what he said. That was back in 1985. And I started teaching a young adult class in this other church. So in the course of my reading and studying for my teaching, one day in the service, the thought is just what you see up here. Nowhere in the New Testament does it mention people sitting in long, orderly rows looking at the back of someone else's head, listening to a man telling us to do things we can't possibly do in that setting. That hit me. He was asking us to do things, and I said, okay, I agree, I understand, but how do we do that? There's no place in this church setting to do what you tell me to do. This is frustrating. There has to be more here. So I began my quest for understanding what the Bible said about discipleship and small group setting and what other churches were doing with this. And I was on the board as an elder at that time. So I was able to convince my pastor to allow a small group ministry in our church with a few key influencers. And it went really well until it innocently started competing with the Sunday evening service. I didn't mean for this to happen, but and this is going to sound boastful, but all the people who wanted to come to this small group study instead of going to Sunday evening service. They were sort of overlapping with it. And unfortunately, it was a song leader and the person who played the piano, and the assistant pastor, and, that was not good. And again, I honestly, before God, I did not intend that to happen. And so, Pastor and I had some issues because one of the persons was his wife. Our philosophy of ministry did not coincide, so rather than causing a church fight and split, my family moved out. So that was
troublemaker.
Yeah, I know. And guess where I moved on to? And as while studying the word for a lesson, I came across this chart. Everything clicked. I should have seen it before, and we can't see it from there. But I'm just like Pastor Stephen. My mind is a very strange place. The way I have to see the big picture, how things fit together. It's called symphonic thinking. You have to see the bits and parts and how it works together and how it all plays out, and you have to see it all at once to understand it. You need to go back and break it down and work on it. But this chart explained everything to me that I've been searching for 25 years. And what it shows, just so you know, is that everyone in the world is on this chart somewhere. It starts at the top with a complete atheist, and at the bottom is a disciple. And it explains how people move from spiritual stages, from step to step to step, and the different communication styles required to do that, and manage response. And all of a sudden, everything clicked for me, and I understood. And of course, being a person with weird thinking, I decided it doesn't make sense going from top to bottom. We're trying to get to heaven, so let's reverse that and go up the steps. And then I don't like going up and down, I like right to left, so let's make it fast. And this is what I came up with. The steps to salvation and the steps after salvation. And there's that decision making about Christ. Okay, decision making is very important, but that's not the complete gospel. So, where do you think on here discipleship would fit? It's a trick question, that's sort of not.
Spiritual growth.
Yes, Pastor Stephen.
Oh, what?
Okay, that would be disciple making. But and we'll explain that in a minute. What about discipleship?
Spiritual water. That's it.
Yes, the spiritual growth side, infant, child, adult, parent. By the way, you ever thought about this? Can infants make disciples?
No.
Good answer. Can children make disciples? they can be both disciple making, we'll explain that in a minute, but making disciples, maybe not. How about adult? That's where you maybe start understanding the need to do it and start to do it. And of course, what's the difference between an adult and a parent?
Children.
Children. So a parent means you've already made one disciple and you're moving on to the next one. You have spiritual children. So good, keep that in mind. So, this is all making disciples, and we call this disciple making. So this whole process is disciple making. The discipleship is this little part over here at the bottom. That's why some people get confused. And we'll explain that here in a minute, a little more in detail. I had a couple major breakthroughs in the last 12 months, believe it or not, here at the church. One of them was when I figured out the concept that small group discipleship. Do I have a slide for this? Yeah. By the way, this is a church going through the candidating process with a pastor. Can you imagine the guys up there preaching, the guys behind the restored that were preaching?
You're welcome. You're welcome. We don't do that.
My breakthrough was that one-to-one or one discipleship is not in competition with small group discipleship and the connect groups. They're the same thing, just in a different setting. We have to understand that for you connect leaders, and we'll talk more about this later, you are actually discipling your people in your connect group if you're doing it correctly. But the other breakthrough was, I'll pull the curtain back in our pastors meeting. Pastor Steve and I sometimes get into disagreements, not very often, but we were fighting over what we thought was differences, but the same thing. And actually what it was I was trying to champion disciple making, and he was pushing discipling, and we thought they were in conflict. So do you understand what the difference is?
And he has a bigger bat.
In
Sorry.
our pastoral team meetings, we actually do discuss and talk about these things.
Clarify again.
Yes, okay, well, I'll go over it. Pastor Stephen's biblical understanding of this topic was simple. The Bible commands all Christians to make disciples. Okay, and that's true. So, as equipping leaders, our job was to encourage, exhort all of our congregation to accept someone discipling them, and them in turn take on a disciple. So that was, in his mind, that was the goal of our church. Was to get everyone to understand how important discipling is, and to accept someone discipling you, and then you in turn discipling someone else, like 2 Timothy 2:2. Okay? Now, for my last 20 years of reading, studying, research, and experience, I throw that in because 20 years ago he was still in school. Actually, no. Yeah. I checked. I saw discipleship as the bigger picture, but what we now call disciple making. I saw discipleship as that, backing up here, whoop, going the wrong way, this whole thing. And in my thinking, I said, well, certain people have different gifts and abilities, and they're better off maybe on this side. They're not as good at actually sitting down one-to-one making disciples. So we have a little bit of a conflict on that, but until I realized we're both correct, and what I talk about is disciple making is this whole process. Now here's the difference. Disciple making is a one-on. It's planting, watering. It could be you talk to someone in the airport and plant a seed. That's disciple making. Our services are disciple. There's a lot of things involved in disciple making. There's no long-term commitment. It's just we are all meant to be disciple makers. So when the situation comes up, you can do apologetics, plant a seed, water, evangelize, make a decision, help people, and you might never see them the rest of your life. It's a very short-term commitment, but you have to be ready. The word says, "Be ready to give an account." That's disciple making, and we're all responsible for that. But in addition to that, once we progress to our spiritual growth, infant, child, adult, we also, in addition to those one-ons, we have to take on a long-term commitment where you one-on-one or a small group or a couple couples to do that too. That's disciple making. So that was a major breakthrough that I figured out when we do both. And it didn't scare me because the other disciple making is more hit or miss, but the discipling is the long term. So you're all looking at me, some of you are smiling, some are looking blank faces, some are going, wow.
Rich,
Yes.
I remember when I first come up to you and I asked you to help me work with me for a while on discipling. And then I found out later that you had never done it before. that kind of set me back for about 20 seconds, you know, I mean, wow. But we both grew, I think, in what we was attempting to do. And again, you know, I've told you this many times, but I did appreciate it because it did open a few new doors for me.
And so you can disciple, be discipling one-on-one groups. If you're a connect leader, and you're not taking anyone one-on-one at the same time, don't feel bad, you are still discipling. Because what is the connect leader supposed to be doing in those meetings? He should be evaluating every person's spiritual situation, where they're at, what the next spiritual gift, growth step is, and help them move to the next step. That's the goal. And we don't do a good job of that. That's what we will be doing the next 12 months. So I just throw that out. So, we only have a couple of minutes left. And actually, my text was John 17. I'll go through that real quick. We're going to skip all this other stuff here to forget all this stuff. It's not a program. And someone may ask, what about seasons of life? How does seasons of life affect your discipling and disciple making? A lot. Don't feel bad if your season of life right now. By the way, who should your primary disciple be? Your kids, your spouse, if you're a man, wife too. So seasons of life, certain seasons of life, you may have to. That's when you're discipling. Don't feel bad. Don't feel bad when we're trying to guilt you and taking someone else on. We're not. So keep that in mind. So seasons of life is very important. When you get older and an empty nest, you have a lot more time to disciple. Hopefully. But then you have your grandkids. So, there's a whole season of life is important. But the question is, did Jesus have bold confidence about the discipleship of his life? And why should we care? Why should we care? Let's answer that first. Why should we care if Jesus had bold confidence about discipleship in his life?
He's our example.
He's our example. He's as a disciple. What's the definition of disciple? Someone who's a student, a learner, a follower of Jesus. So turn to John 17 real quick. And we have 3 minutes to bust through this, so don't worry. You've all heard this before. This will be fairly fast. John 17. I'm going to read the first maybe 5 verses here. John 17, 1 to 5. Jesus spoke these words, lifted up his eyes to heaven, and said, Father, the hour has come. Glorify your Son, that your Son may also glorify you, as you have given him authority over all flesh, that you should give eternal life to as many as you have given him. And this is eternal life, that you may know the only true God, and Jesus Christ whom you have sent. I have glorified you on the earth. I have finished the work which you have given me to do. Let me repeat that. I have finished the work which you have given me to do. And now, O Father, glorify me together with you with glory which I have with you before the world was. So, Jesus boldly and confidently declared, I have finished the work which you have given me. So I guess the question is, what was that work? That's pretty important to figure that out. And, scattered from the 26 verses and the rest of that chapter concludes what that was. And you're correct. What did you say it was? Making disciples. Okay, so some of the clues. You find in verse 6, it wasn't the whole world. Who was it? A select group of men. So, verse 6, verse 7, he did what? He taught them to keep your word. I'm on his Father God. Verse 11, taught them unity. Verse 18, gave them a pattern to follow. You said, I'm sending them. That's the pattern of discipleship. I've been doing this for the past 3.5 years with a select small group of men you have given me. This is Jesus talking to God. As of tonight, that portion of their spiritual growth is complete. Now, that doesn't mean their spiritual growth was complete. That portion that he was in charge of was complete. Notice, of all the things things Jesus had done and what was about to do, the cross, he picked to call his completed work. And what was that? What did those things describe? If you were doing those things, what would you be called? A discipler. Okay, so Jesus, at the end of his life, had the bold confidence that he had completed the work. And what was his work? Discipling. So we are to be little Jesuses, little Christ, actually. We're not Jesus and we're Christians. Hint, again, not denying the cross wasn't important. He was talking about the most important thing for him is getting these guys prepared to be disciples. So I guess the bottom line is Jesus is to be our perfect model. We should be like him. So I think we can be boldly confident that this glorifies and pleases God if we do this. So again, I hope from this that you understand, at least you might have further questions about the difference between disciple making and discipling. You got to get our words straight on this, or else we will have conflicts. Understanding. You're all responsible for both, but it depends on your season of life and where you are for the discipling part. We're hoping to get everyone discipling in the church, but that is a long-term process also. So we're not supposed to be asking questions, so everyone asks questions. No, I'm just kidding. I'm